Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pull same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to our study session, we have our energy report from Mr. Steve Lund.
You're afraid I would nod off in the audience before it was. All right. Every year at this time, I try to get back to you and give you a report of how we're doing with our energy program. And I'll kind of regress a little bit because I think there are always probably new people on the board and haven't heard all of this before, but it'll be a review for some of the others. All right, we started in 2004, and at that time they contracted with Energy Education, which is now Synergistics, to implement a program here in our district. And to this point, we have saved almost $4.5 million in energy costs, which is a fairly substantial amount of money. And then just to give you a little summary, our total energy cost for the district for this past year was $764,000, which is up $86,000 from the previous year, which is probably understandable when as you recall, the winter we had. But I can give you more details on. This is kind of a breakdown of each of the years from 2002 to the present day. 2002, 2003, we consider our base year. This is actually before we started the program. So everything is based off from that year. You can look at it this year and see that our energy costs have gone up, but we still have considerable savings. This is always a difficult number to deal with because our savings go up the more we spend. And it's just that there's more opportunity, which is kind of frustrating on years when you have, or months you have beautiful weather and all of a sudden you find out you didn't save anything, you know. So it's sort of a little bit reverse of what you'd like to see, but. Okay, we'll break it down into the different categories. Electricity, we're still, on the left side, you'll see the 2002, 2003 base year. And on the right side, our past year. And you can see we're still using considerably less electricity than we did in our base year in 2002, 2003, which is pretty interesting because we've certainly added a lot of technology and things over these years, and this doesn't factor any of that in. It's just straight facts on those things. So, you know, that's been our saving grace, is that we continue to use less. The other thing is our demand is less, because demand determines the cost that you pay, and that's your peak each month. So we want to keep that demand down to keep our costs down. And we are keeping the demand down. But you can see when you look at the cost comparison over the years, you know, we were about 7 cents a kilowatt, and now we're up to 12 cents a kilowatt. So therefore, even though we've reduced our usage, our cost has gone up over our base year. We're up to about $529,000, yeah.
So that decimal point really needs to go over on that.
0.069? Yes, I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, okay, yep. I'm sorry about that. Got them all. Okay, so, yeah, that's our comparison to 2002, 2003. If you look at the next slide, it shows you on the left our usage over the previous 3 years. So you can see we haven't gone up considerably in the past 3 years. On the right side, it shows you the cost over the past 3 years. But our cost has gone up. The usage and the cost. And that's, you know, the thing we work with all the time is the fact that cost we can't control, use we can. Questions? Natural gas is similar. We're still using less than we did on our base year. You can see on the right, we're still considerably below what we once were. But again, our cost per unit has gone up. But we still are able to maintain. Gas hasn't gone up nearly as much as electricity has gone up. So, although that has had its years, if you go back in our history, there was a period there where gas went up and was very high. And but now it's at a point where we're still below our base year as far as our gas costs, which is where we'd like to stay. And that's not bad considering the winter we'd had. And I don't think too many of us at home used less gas last year than we did in previous years. And then again, you can look at, on the left again, is our use, and the right, our cost. Our cost has gone up over the years, but and we've gone through some gas increases as we've gone through some electric increases over the past few years, and they continue to go up.
Does geothermal help at the high school? Has that helped with the cost reduction or the usage reduction?
Definitely. The thing about geothermal, though, it's electric. The heating is done with electric, so it's not a gas use over there. The high school only uses basically gas for the pool area, cooking, a few things like that. So basically, that's all electricity. But yeah, I'll show you when we get to the cost per square foot, actually what that does. Typically in any school district, the high school should be your most costly school, just simply because you have a pool, you have 24/7 operation there. You know, it's really never shuts down over there, and that's true even in the summer. So you can see. Yeah, we'll move on to water sewer. Well, that's one we really, fortunately, it isn't a huge cost for us, but that goes up tremendously, and then we'll continue the way our city talks. As we have greater demand on our system and upgrades needed, I'm sure that cost will continue to go up. And again, we're using less water than we did in our base year, but you can see the cost there has really gone up. So our overall cost is about $20,000 higher than we were paying at that point. But you can see how high it would be if we didn't have that savings. And this year our water was down considerably because of Hammer Field. We weren't irrigating out there all summer. And, now with the artificial turf, we shouldn't have to irrigate that part, but I'm sure we'll still have practice fields and soccer fields and things like that we'll use considerable. And plus, this year was not a very dry year, so we really didn't need to have.
Steve, do you know where they put the timers on all the irrigation we put out there? What's that? I'm sure it will be. I hope so. I'm sure it will be.
Well, I'm hoping, and I haven't really seen it. I'm hoping that we can improve things out there by the changes that were made. I'm assuming the lighting that's put in is, going to be much less expensive than the old lighting that we had.
Instant on, instant off. It's be scheduled on and off. Yes.
Yep. And, in the past, we heated water out there with old boilers that were ancient, and hopefully we have a better heating system there. It would be nice if it were on demand, but I don't know I haven't seen what they're doing with that. But, I don't think with the additions we're making there that it should cost us any more money, which is what we'd like to see. And again, you can see the water and the cost. Little dip in the cost again this year was due to the dip in the use. The only thing you can attribute to that is the Hammer project. They haven't used anything out there all summer. This is kind of an interesting comparison because it shows in 3 different ways how we compare with the Minnesota B3 is a system that the state has used for a number of years, and it was voluntary. We started it years ago because I think Bruce Olson was asking for a grant and needed our data in the B3 program, so I entered it and have just continued it, which was fortunate in that now I received a notice that as of October it's mandatory. So we'll just be ahead of the game. So although there's no penalty for it, I don't know how that goes, but you have to do it, but if you don't, nothing happens. So all right, so that's the B3 rating, and what you're really looking at there is how it rates with other schools in the state of Minnesota. So out of 100 schools that are the size and use of Brookside, that Brookside would rate number 63. Or Halverson number 29, Hawthorne 83, and so forth. And as you recall, if you've been here other years, Sibley and Southwest is a difficult number to deal with because Sibley heats Southwest, and there's no way to show that in that program. So Sibley looks exceptional because they don't use any gas, and Southwest is way down because they use a lot more gas than they actually should for the square footage that they have to heat. So that number is somewhere in between. Never been able. Energy Star is something that we've participated in the past. 75 is the number that you would be considered an Energy Star building if you went through the process. And you can see like Brookside is 96. That's really, Sibley of course is 100 as it should be. Hawthorne 95. Hawthorne does very well. Halverson is our most expensive building to heat and to cool and everything, but it's one level, has a larger footprint, has some very old single pane windows, you know, that they have the, I call them sliders, everyone has a different name for them, that go over the window to insulate it during the very cold and warm season. They're sometimes hard to get people to use because they're difficult to deal with, but and if they don't use them, it's really expensive out there because we have single pane, huge windows on each room, so it's expensive.
Put little stickers on their computer if they don't use those too.
Oh yeah, well, not on their computer. I put it. Oh yeah, that. Yeah, everyone thinks that the only thing I do is go out and check computers. Well, obviously we check a lot more than that. That's the only thing they care about. Yeah, so and that's fine. I don't care what they, you know. But if you look down, all the buildings really do quite well, and would qualify. Even Southwest would qualify if we were able to do that properly. And there you look at next our cost per square foot. And you can see again, we do quite well. I know nationally, we're well below in energy, comparing other schools nationally to our school, we're well below in electricity and even natural gas, which kind of surprises me because I'm sure schools in Texas don't use a lot of natural gas, or Florida, or those southern states. So we do very well with, by comparison. We're well under, I think it's about $1.25 is the average nationally for schools. So yeah, it's and there you see again the high school, $1.07 a square foot. That's very reasonable for a high school. Because there's just so much activity there.
The footprint for Halverson now, do you see that changing substantially with the big gym space? Or?
No, it shouldn't get any better. No. I don't think that will change. You know, over the years they've been changing out some of the windows, like in the it was a couple of years ago they did the halls, you know, the connecting halls between the wings there. That helped a lot. Yeah. They've had a lot of turnover in staff, you know, and to get them used to the idea you've got to close those things up. You can't leave them open, you know, when you go home and things like that. And like I say, they're a, you know, it's a lot of struggle to tug on those things and get them closed up. But, you know, it does help if we can get them to do it. And we keep working on it. And we've had a lot of turnover there in custodial help too. And that makes a big difference. You know, it just, you know, the custodian that was there when we started this program, he was so used to the building, he could tell you almost to the degree when I could shut a boiler off, you know, and when we needed it on. I mean, he just knew the building that well. And that comes with time, but it takes time to get to that point. Any questions about that?
Would it be cost efficient to replace those inefficient energy
Oh, you know, cost efficient? No, probably not. But energy efficient? Yes, you know. You know, if you're looking at, you know, return on your investment, you know, they like to keep it down to 4 or 5 years. Well, I think you'd be probably well out beyond that because, first of all, they probably wouldn't put in windows that large anymore. You'd probably have to brick them up and so forth, you know. They just don't do that anymore. So, probably not cost efficient. Okay, and if you're looking at the environmental impact, you can see the number of trees, seedlings that were, if it were grown for 10 years, it would equal the same amount of impact as we're having. Or the number of passenger cars that you took off the road for 1 year would equal the amount of gases that we've taken out of the environment. Okay. Any questions?
I think that's been a fantastic program. When I was on the school board the first time, I think, Jill.
Yes, you were
and I,
actually
we
on.
implemented this program, and it's been fantastic, and it's good to see that it's still going, and it's great to see that savings, and that was a great report.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Mary Jo, our MCA overview.
Well, energy was fun to talk about, but I think students will be more fun, so let's get started here. Okay, here's the Pathways doc developed by the school board, which is our guiding pathway that we use. Oh, I got the remote. I was waiting for Ashley. Sorry, I got it. Get too excited talking about students. This was just released to us in July. So here are our new free and reduced numbers. So if you go all the way to the right-hand side, 2020, they're actually last year's numbers. The federal government uses October 1st of the prior year. But you can see our district total free and reduced percentage is now 52.28%. And then I just listed all the buildings there, so you can just look at those. All right, move on from there. So the reporting today that I'll be going over is the North Star report, which was released publicly last week, and it scores 5 different areas in each school district. And the 5 stars there are consistent attendance, academic achievement, academic progress, progress towards English language proficiency, and then the grad rates. Both 4- and 7-year grad rates are used. And so we'll start with math, and I have a lot of numbers on here, so I'll quick explain. On the left side of the chart is the proficiency for students who both met and exceeded on the math MCA. The top part of the chart is statewide averages. The bottom part is the Albert Lea averages, and we have over the last 3 years, sorry. And the right side is the percent of students that are eligible to be taking the MCA test or the MTAS. And so you can see in 2019, the state average is 97% of students in the state who could be taking the MCA or MTAS are taking it. And then you drop down to Albert Lee, and we're at 89%. So that is our challenge.
Mary Jo, could you just explain that again? So that's, it says eligible, but that's actually how many percent take the test?
That, yeah, it is confusing. So the percent tested means 89% of our students last year in grades 3 through 11 who were eligible to take the MCA reading, MCA math, well, in this case, it's just math. MCA math, 11% of those students opted out. And the exact number, to put that percentage in perspective, is 197 students in the district. Why that's a challenge is when the North Star accountability does not just look at proficiency, it takes all those 197 students and puts them in the not met category. So for us, the reality of truly saying these MCAs are a good indicator for us, at an elementary level, yep, we have very few students opting out. At 11th grade, many, many, many students are opting out of the 11th grade math test.
Okay, I think I heard you correctly. Let's just make sure. So it's not that those kids who aren't taking it are just not in the data. They are counted as not meeting standard?
That is correct. So that happened with the change when we started hearing the North Star reporting. That's what North Star did. So it's holding the districts accountable for students not taking the test. So when we're compared to others in the state, it's definitely affecting those districts that have higher numbers of students opting out. I'm just going to go a couple slides ahead so you can just look at this. I broke it down by demographics so you can see, okay, who are the students opting out? And so these demographics that I have listed are all the ones that were available to us by MDE to look at to say, here's the demographics of the state average of kids who are taking the test, and then Albert Lee's average. Then I gathered the Big 9 numbers, and you can see at the bottom, Red Wing is facing very much the same challenges, more so than we are. But also at the top, you have those other districts that are 97, 98, 99% of their students taking the test. So then it's more reliable on are students proficient readers or not, where when we have less kids taking the test, it's just becoming a less reliable indicator.
The problem with that too is it's the parents signing off that they don't need to take the test. And then those are the same students that are taking ACTs and doing very, very well, but they're passing one and we look bad on the other because they're not taking it.
Correct.
Well, it looks like if you compare, so like free and reduced is down 5% compared to some others. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was just, you know, I don't know if it tells us a whole lot. I mean, kind of interesting when you look at the demographics of kids who are opting out. I mean, we understand it, just like Dennis said, well, I'm taking the ACE, so I don't want to do the 11th grade math test. Yep, we get it. You know, opt-outs are also going to affect us negatively when we look at reading, because if we start to see this happen in elementary, which I hope doesn't happen, because, you know, I wear several hats in relation to this type of testing. You know, as a parent, I wore it, and I would have still had my students take it, or my children take it, because I want them prepared by the time they get to really high accountability test of ACTs, where that ACT score can pay for your college. And I don't know if parents understand that. So to me, hey, just take it. It's try your best, do your best, and stakes keep getting higher. And I know as an admin, I had to take a principal test. As a reading specialist, I took one. Riverland College, you want to be a welder, you want to be radiology tech. There's just tests to test your proficiency. So I think word got out a few years ago with some parents that, well, you can opt out. Yes, you can, but does that mean that's the best thing to do? So we're trying to work back from that, and the state also recognizes the issues with it. So no solutions today, but that's our current reality. So I'll just go back to, so this was the math proficiency, met and exceeds percent. And then the other thing with the North Star reporting is our student growth for math. So when you see 41% are considered low, well, that includes 197 kids who didn't take the test. So, yep, Dennis, they may have scored really high on that ACT test and would have high growth, but we're not seeing it here.
And my guess is it's kind of like Albert Lee is leading the forefront. I'm guessing the change is going to start happening in a lot of districts unless the MCAs start to change.
Well, it's interesting, and she'll get to a few slides here in a moment, but there's another slide she's going to show you on rigor and what we have for college in the schools and what we have for AP compared to the rest of the state. And it's a different story when you look at rigor versus MCA, what our students are doing.
And the North Star reporting started how long ago?
3 years ago? 3 years ago.
And can you go back to the one with the percentages again? So it looks like we've been declining over the past 3 years itself, 6 points over the last 2 years. Do you know if the opt-out rate has been changing that much as well over the past 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, it's, here, I can't read that screen, but I can read this. Yeah, a couple of percentage points.
Oh, yeah, so it looks like not even.
So 2 years ago, 89% if we round up, which is 89% this year,
Yeah.
88% last year. So we're staying in that same area. In 2016, we were at 97%.
So it's concerning to me is the percentage of opt-out hasn't changed too much, but it seems like our proficiency has slipped greater than that.
Yep, it has dropped a little bit. And the other thing, and I have it at the end, but the building principals will be here over the next 3 school board meetings, and they're going to go in-depth over their building data. And as you're going to see when Mark Grossklos is here, our biggest opt-outs is the high school.
I'm wondering if going hand in hand with our tendency towards opting out, it might also be a factor that our students who are taking the test aren't all that serious about it, don't really work as hard as they might to do well on the test. I mean, it's totally immeasurable, but
They might. I'll show you some EL data coming up here that kind of question that theory as well, but it depends. You're right, there could be. So same thing here. This is a reading data. So on the left, the percent of students in Albert Lea that met or exceeded on the reading MCA was 48.5, 49%, and the state average about 10% higher. And the opt-outs for reading are 190 students opted out of reading. So we're talking pretty significant numbers. The growth looks a little better here. That's the 158 students, sorry. So of the 441 students who showed low growth, that would include 158 students who did not take the test. So they'd be in that blue, the dark blue, not showing growth. And then science. Here we had 190 students opt out, and that's only 3 years of a test, 5th, 8th, and then 10th grade at the high school. And a considerable amount, you can see 76% of the kids are testing, 24% are opting out. Yeah, science was the most significant of kids opting out.
It's interesting though, so 17 through 19, the opting out has increased by about 15%, but really the scores from 2017 to 19 are very comparable.
Yeah, the other exciting thing coming with science is new standards are expected to be hopefully approved this year. They said this year or next year by Minnesota. And the K-12 science teams are going to be doing a lot of work this year. And I think the more work, when we pull teams together and really collaborate, dig down, what are the standards, what do we need to be teaching, what grade needs to be teaching this, that then aligns to the next grade moving up, I think we'll see some improvement in our science scores. This is the next part of the North Star report is it scores our English language progress towards an individual student's target. So this is not the MCA test. This is the access test, which is an English language test given in February and March, so before the MCAs. And the EL teachers this year have done this past year actually, have done incredible amounts of work. And this is exciting to see that it's starting to pay off. So you can see that the first chart shows what this chart is telling us is that when our EL students took the access test, the state sets targets that they need to meet to say this is a criteria score they should get to show growth, at least a year's growth. So you can see that we're above the state average for our English learners and the individual growth that the state sets for them. And then the right chart shows the percent of the students meeting the target. And so in both cases, above state average, just slightly on the right one, but we continue to see more, I think we'll see more growth in this area as we really focus and align, and a lot of work with our EL teachers and classroom teachers on what are best practices for multilingual learners. So, any questions on this one? Okay. All right, and this is graduation rates. So the first one is the 4-year grad rate for 2018, and you can see the columns are the statewide average. The district as a whole, which includes obviously the high school and the ALC, but then I broke out the high school and the ALC so you can see both graduation rates in those areas. And the 7-year grad rate is actually from the class of 2015. So they're not comparable years. So you can't really compare the years. It's the 4-year rate just happened over a year ago, the 7-year rate farther down the road. Demographics, a little more limited, just because if you can read my notes on that chart, it says cell size too small. If a student's cell size count number is 20 or less, we don't know the percentage because MDE and publicly we don't want people to be able to identify, oh, that's probably this student. That's not part of this reporting. So that's why those cells are left blank. But as a whole, you can see the demographics of where students are graduating, and these are based on the 4-year rates. The state also gives us a percent continuing, based on the reporting we do, of students who, like in the white category, 80.5% of the students in the district graduated, but 11% of the students are still continuing on. So that could be an EL student who's staying at the high school for 1, 2, or 3 more years. It could be at the ALC. Could be our 18 to 21-year-old program. So it's really exciting to see those students. They're not done yet, and happy that they're continuing on. I think the one that was most exciting when I pulled the demographic was if you look at the Asian category, the statewide average is 87% of Asian students graduate, But in Albert Lee as a district, it's 66, 67%. But 27% of those students are going to continue on. And we know we have a higher, our Asian population is, the demographic within that is many Korean refugees who now citizens, and but to know that's a high percentage who are continuing on. And they can stay to the high school now until they're 22. That just changed. And then free and reduced is the last category, the demographic available to us, and you can read that. Any questions on this or clarification?
Do we have information for, I see you for free reduced lunch for the state continuing, but for any of the other demographics, how many are continuing to get that?
You know, if we look at the next category is Black or African American, cell size too small, American Indian, cell size was too small. So I just picked the ones within the district that we could look at. So that demographic is not large enough for the MDE to report that.
Are you asking, Angie, that do we have the percent continuing for Asian, Hispanic, and white?
For the state,
Yes.
yeah.
That's what she's asking.
Oh,
Put that in.
yeah, I could have put that on there. And actually, I did look at that Asian one, and I didn't put it on there. But it was very small, which would make sense since the grad rate's already at 86. But
It'd be interesting just to see that comparison.
yeah, I'll get that added.
Joe, if you could change something about this MCA testing process, either statewide or at our district level, hate to put you on the spot, but what would you do?
I'm ambitious, but I'm not a superwoman. I think that's really up to superintendents, and I think in Mike's response in his press release to the newspaper was, we need change. This is not telling us as a district where we're at with proficiency for reading or math.
I'm not shy. I would get rid of the MCA at the high school level. I would have it go through 8th grade. High school, we have ACT, we've got other, other tests we can give to kids who are going on into the tech world. As long as we can provide some sort of nationalized test to students, I think that's what we should do. We also need to realign some of our standards, I think, to some of these national standards as opposed to the MCA, because one of the concerns we have is we're required to provide an opportunity for kids to take the ACT. Every student at the high school, well, that's great, but our teachers are teaching the standards aligned to the MCAs, and they're not necessarily in sync with the ACT. So I think there's a discussion that, and actually we had a committee from the Capitol, from the House of Representatives here a few years ago, and we brought this very issue up probably 3 years ago now, and there's been no movement on it.
You know, and I think the last NAEP testing that MD has recorded for Albert Lee is either 2015 or 2016. And when I looked, I didn't put it in here, just it's old data, but when we looked nationally, I think 7% of the kids exceeded nationally on that NAEP reading test, and 14 or 15% exceeded in Albert Lee on that test. And so exactly what Mike's talking about, I mean, I could go on a soapbox for hours about testing and reading and et cetera, but nationally we're not comparing the same. So we all agree with you, Neil. Angie, I did find that the Asian, I wrote it down, but I didn't put it on there, was 8%. And the last part of the North Star reporting is consistent attendance, and I broke that down by demographic area as well, and the demographic area for our purpose really helps with our parent groups, Because we'll, like in a couple weeks, we already have a Korean and Spanish night at Halverson. And it really helps to know, are there certain parent groups who are really missing? And then we can look at these percentages to say, okay, yep, we should reach out more to maybe a certain demographic that needs just more targeted, us reaching out to them, so.
Can you define what consistent attendance is?
Yep, over 90, oh shoot, now I'm gonna forget it, and I don't think I wrote it down. Over 90%, my colleague Kathy, I'm sure has it memorized. It's basically over 90% of the students have consistent attendance, and I will put that in the school board report because it's not rolling off my tongue right now.
The only reason I ask that is because I think it's hard to really know what that is, because attendance is taken for students that are leaving for other programs or leaving for and coming back. You know what I mean? I want to get an understanding of what that means. Are these students that are just not coming to school, or are these students that are coming and going, or how that works? So,
Do you have it?
For the purposes of the MDE, a student will be considered to be consistently attending school if they attend more than 90% of school days.
All right. Any more questions on this? And the last thing is MDE identifies rigorous coursework as PSEO, post-secondary, CIS, college in the schools, and also advanced placement. So, whoops. You can see our percentages here. CIS, we're above state average, which is awesome. Right, Kim?
So when we talk about opt-outs of the MCA test in high school in particular, and we have 100, 200 kids almost opting out, I think here's your why. All right, you've got kids who are taking rigorous tests within college and the schools, consistent, pretty significantly higher than the state average, and then go to the next slide quick. And same thing for AP. Statewide, 32% participate. Albert Lee, 38%. In AP, go back, Mary Jo. And then, again, looking at the statewide participation, concurrent enrollment, 33%. Albert Lee, 45%. So I think those are significant factors that our kids are flowing to take the more rigorous coursework, which is a great thing. But then they are not taking the MCA test, which they don't see as much value in.
do we have any data on how many of those opt-outs were in those categories?
No, we could probably figure that out, yeah.
So just so I get my understanding, so this is telling us that the statewide percent participating in the MCAs was 9% of those who are in post-secondary and
No,
college and
so
schools?
this is, kids can take college in the schools through Riverland and get college credit for it. So these are college-level classes offered by high school teachers at Albert Lee. And so across the state, 32% is the average statewide for college in the schools, and Albert Lee is 45%.
Okay, so this is just reflecting college in the schools and not relating back to the MCA. Okay,
This is
thank you.
not, no, this
Okay.
is, yeah, nothing to MCAs. But I thought I'd just include this since it's part of the MDE reporting that, it's interesting data, and it kind of explains some of the thoughts on why kids are saying, got enough stuff going, I'm not taking that 10th grade reading MCA test or the 11th grade math test.
I think it's very relevant because the timing. So it's the end of the coursework for a lot of the CIS classes. It's the AP testing and it's the MCA testing. So if you're a student who is ambitious and is thinking about that next step, the MCA, the conversation is that important? to what they individually want to
Okay.
accomplish. And so I think it is relevant. As a parent, it was really difficult to sell that, knowing what I know, but knowing that the emphasis was on the CIS classes, you know, and the ACT test.
Yeah. Well, and the AP test, I mean, very rigorous, and, I mean, some kids had psychology AP in the morning, and we're taking AP U.S. government or U.S. history in the afternoon. I mean, that close to the last day of school. And the econ test, AP econ, was on the last day of school. So it's testing right up to the end for students, and it's rigorous. And then obviously there's more data by grade levels that will be presented. So I just put the dates that the principals will be coming from each of these buildings and sharing their individual data from last year.
Any questions?
Okay, yep. And I'll get those things added on.
Okay, thank
All
you very
right,
much,
thank
Mary
you.
Jo. Next, we have just an update from me. Last meeting, we went into closed session, and so the update would be that we looked at different methods to evaluate this superintendent. And so we're weighing different things, and as you can see, we're going to go into closed session again. And I think everyone's had time to digest it and look at it and so on. So I would entertain a motion to go into closed session for both labor negotiations and then continue our evaluation.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor of going into closed session under Minnesota statute 13Ds signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries.